Hello everybody, my name is Danielle Fopp and I'll be taking you through today's lecture. Now today's lecture is a continuation of the introduction to the project appraisal process, and specifically we are going to be looking at why project appraisals are needed in construction. Now we know that appraising the project means evaluating the proposed project solution against its ability to solve the identified problem or gap of need for the client. And for this reason, project appraisals are an essential stage of any project. Without having appraised a project, it is both financially and technically irrational to proceed with a construction project. And this topic will guide you through the reasoning behind why we conduct project appraisals. And if we have a look at the three items on the screen, these three key factors of why we conduct project appraisals is because they lead to an increased quality of the projects implemented. So rather than complete 20 projects that are of average quality, you might complete 10 that really hit the mark for financial, technical, profit, social outcomes. A project appraisal also helps to enhance the long-term profitability of the project, because in a project appraisal, we don't just look at the initial costs for construction, we look at the whole of life for the project. And a project appraisal also helps to minimise risk, which is key in any consulting or construction firm. As we have seen, a project appraisal prior to construction or implementation is directly linked to the success of a project. But let's dive a little deeper into what the success of a project actually means. Success as a generic term means to gain advantage, superiority, achievement, or added value. And one interpretation of project success is that the stakeholders who are part of or affected by the project are satisfied. However, we know that success of a project will look very different to each stakeholder and equally each client. And your client's perception or the stakeholder's perception of success or failure of a project is commonly affected by personal preferences. This is why different people tend to assess the success of the same project differently, depending on their own personal experiences and values. And we can see on the screen here, we have the success of a project, which has been defined as efficiency, effectiveness, relevance, impact, and sustainability. So for this specific client, their measures of success are seen in relation and to association with the project's various outputs and outcomes as time passes. So we can see on level 3, more specifically, they want budget compliance, they want achievement of objectives, they want future viability of the project. And to work through the success of a project in this 3-stage application is really helpful, because we have level 1. Your client in a meeting will say, I want the project to be successful. But as we will see, level 2 and level 3 of what that actually means as we dive deeper is different for every stakeholder and client. Now again, this is a second project or a third project down the line. We go into the kickoff meeting and the client says, I want the project to be successful. That's the level 1 definition of success. Now, if you leave it there, there is really quite a large amount of room for you to misinterpret what they mean by that. So let's dive deeper. This particular client, when we really ask them, what do you mean by project success? Will they have internal project objectives that they'd like to meet? Budget, resource constraints, meeting schedules and timelines. Then they also want the benefit to the customer in the short term. So they want functional performance, they want fulfilling customer needs, and they want the customer to be using the product and to be satisfied with the product. Then they have the medium term and long-term goals of direct contribution and future opportunity. So they want immediate revenue and profits. They don't want to be waiting for 2 or 3 years down the line before they start seeing returns. But they also want the project to create new opportunities for the future and to position their customer competitively in a new market. Now, if we had left it at the kickoff meeting as the project needs to be successful, it is highly unlikely that we would have gotten to level 3 of what the client really wants from this project, and therefore you may be appraising the wrong items. And now for one final example of how success of a project is different for each client. This particular client, again in the kickoff meeting, says, I want the project to be successful. But their measure of success is actually seen in relation to the management of the project, the business case, the project management, the project business success. They want to see the project delivered on time, at cost, with accuracy. They want change requests documented and approved and quality assurance processes followed. They want stakeholder satisfaction, which we didn't necessarily see in the other items specifically mentioned like that. They want enhanced productivity, reduced paperwork, and real-time processing reports. So we now know that the project appraisal will help us to better understand if the project objectives and the client success factors are worthwhile, if the risks are commensurate with the potential rewards, if the project is likely to achieve its objectives, and as we've seen, the objectives of the project are really closely linked with the client success factors of a project. And they might not articulate it in the specific objectives, but you need to make sure that you're aware of both the official or formal project objectives and the client success factors. The project appraisal will also help us to understand if the underlying logic behind the project is clearly articulated. And again, this is where we can use the success factors. If you have a project objective that is not aligned with the client success factors, the client may not have a clear understanding of the logic behind the project, and it is so important that we clearly articulate this from the beginning. Now, a project appraisal is required for almost every type of construction project. However, some construction projects require a larger, more in-depth project appraisal than others. For example, a project such as a residential home where there used to be an old home which was demolished might need a very brief project appraisal to ensure that all the objectives and client success factors are achieved with this new build. It's a low risk project. However, some projects which have higher risk levels will require a more in-depth project appraisal in order to ensure that the project objectives are worthwhile. So let's have a look at an example. Ghost cities in China are well known for this reason, and we've got the source there on the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Feel free to copy and paste that into your browser if you would like to read up more on this. But unlike parts of, say, the United States or Japan, where there are homes in various states of abandonment and decay, they are called ghost towns. However, China's ghost towns are different. They're not abandoned, they're just unoccupied. So there's a difference. We're not talking about homes which are abandoned because they are decayed or because they have got mould from a flood. We are talking about brand new apartment complexes that are unoccupied. And the first thing to understand about China's ghost cities is that they are not cities in states of disrepair. Instead, they're full of new builds that were bought as investment properties, but there's no investors, there's no renters, no one is living in them. They're a symptom of mismatched supply and demand. And if a project appraisal was undertaken for these ghost cities, the project appraiser would have come across the fact that the client objective of having an investment apartment would not be achieved given the current social demand and social supply of rental properties. Hello everybody, my name is Danielle Fopp and I'll be taking you through today's lecture. Now today's lecture is a continuation of the introduction to the project appraisal process, and specifically we are going to be looking at why project appraisals are needed in construction.